Hi, I'm Charlie. I'm the founder of Charlie the Traveler, and today we're going to be talking all about Bolivia, the landlocked country in the middle of South America. We'll put together an itinerary where I recommend you go, how much time in each of these places, and the order in which to visit these places. We'll talk about how to get around, meaning the transportation. Talk about expense, how to visit Bolivia without blowing your budget. We're going to talk about the food, we're going to talk about the people and the culture, we'll talk about some safety tips, and I'll share with you a funny story or two. So let's get straight into it with when I think you should visit Bolivia. There are two main seasons over there, wet and dry, basically. That's the best way to understand it. The most popular time to visit Bolivia is June through August. Now, this is actually the dry season, but it's also a little bit colder. It's also not when you see the mirror effect in the salt flats. People envision that scene. It's like a postcard perfect setting, and that's one of the main highlights of visiting Bolivia. However, that is not the most popular time when people visit. The other time of the year is January, February, March. That is the wet season. It is visited, but a little bit less. The main reason why it's still popular during that time of year is because of that mirror effect in the salt flats. But why is that not the most popular time? I mean, it's warmer, right? There's a couple of reasons. One, it's wetter, so there's more rain. But the main reason is because when it rains in the salt flats, much of it is cut off. So you're a little bit more limited in terms of the area you can see in that whole region of southern Bolivia. And that is indeed the most popular part of Bolivia. That is the number one reason why most people visit Bolivia. And when a third of it is cut off because of the rain, a lot of people choose to go during June, July, and August when it's dry, everything's accessible, and they'll endure the fact that it's a little bit colder. So that's just something to think about. That's something for you to choose, but now you know the facts. How to get around Bolivia. I would not just show up to Bolivia. There are parts of the world that you can do that. You can get to the United Kingdom and just say, hey, I'm here, and you could use their trains and hop off and on bus tours and go to the tourist information. Bolivia is not one of those countries. I would not rent a car over there. You will get lost very quickly. I remember with one of the drivers that I've used for the company that I founded, Charlie the Traveler, we operate in Bolivia. When I had gone with him last, I saw him, no GPS, no nothing, and how he's getting around the salt flats and everywhere else for 3 days. There's no road signs, nothing, and this guy had it down to perfection. God bless him. I don't know what he did, but I can tell you, you're not going to be able to do the same. So go with a company's package tour. Forget the trains. There are some good buses, and I'm going to talk to you about them in a minute, and most likely you will need their bus, even if you go on a package tour with a company. I have to tell you this, for international flights, you're going to either fly into Santa Cruz or directly into La Paz. I recommend, if possible, that you fly into La Paz and out of La Paz. If possible, avoid Santa Cruz altogether. If not possible, then from Santa Cruz, you'll need to get your luggage. Take your luggage and now check into another flight with the domestic airlines and go from Santa Cruz to La Paz. There are several flights throughout the day, every day. It will not be difficult for you to get a flight. Buying the ticket online is sometimes a problem, as the domestic airlines websites often malfunction. So that's kind of another problem. This is why we actually purchase the domestic flights for our customers, because we know it's going to be very difficult for them to do it online. But yeah, if you have to fly in and out of Santa Cruz, don't worry. Just get your luggage, purchase another flight to go from Santa Cruz directly to La Paz. So let's kind of get to this here. So the itinerary I recommend, again, starts in La Paz, ends in La Paz. Most people coming into Bolivia arrive very late, and they don't get to the hotel until around 2 o'clock in the morning. So the hotels are not going to let you check in that early. So you're going to need what's basically a pre-tour day, and you're going to need to just pay for an extra night of lodging. You showing up at 2 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they're going to treat it as a day, and they're going to charge you for a day. When you get to La Paz, I would stay at nothing short of a 5-star hotel. There are not a lot of them there, but I would stay at one of the 5-star hotels. Note that the 5-star hotel that is closer to the city center is a little bit outdated. Not bad. I mean, I've stayed there myself. I was fine with it. The main complaint that we get is that there's sometimes noise when there are festivals and other celebrations. Other than that, it's fine. The location's better. There is another very good hotel that we use that is further out. The disadvantage is that if you just want to, walk out of your hotel and go to the main square, you can't. But it is quieter, and the building is much more updated. So we kind of give both options to our customers, and they choose what they think is best for them. So now you've arrived in La Paz, whether you've gotten there directly or whether you had to go through Santa Cruz. It's late at night. Most people are going to need a visa to get into Bolivia. If you can get it before arrival, great. If not, you'll need to get it upon arrival. You would think that the security there can just crank this stuff out. No. they even though they've done it, every time they look at it, it's like their first time doing it. It can become very time consuming. It could take only 45 minutes. It could take a couple of hours. It just depends who you got in front of you filling out all the paperwork. So if you can do it in advance, great. If you can't, do the visa right when you get there. It's now late. You arrange for a driver to pick you up at the airport with a sign with your name on it, take you to your hotel, get some sleep, get a good night's sleep. Don't start the next day early because you're going to need to adjust to the time difference as well as the fact that you're getting there in the middle of the night. So you get a good night's sleep, you now wake up, you have your lunch, you're done with lunch, it's about 1 o'clock. I recommend you start touring. This is what I'll call day one of a tour that I recommend be 10 days in Bolivia. On that first day in La Paz, I would recommend that you go to the Valley of the Animals, or Valle de las Animas. It is a beautiful valley on the outskirts of La Paz where you'll see beautiful rock formations. I would spend the rest of the time checking out the cable car system that the city has. That was, for me, the most impressive thing about the city itself. My understanding is that the system was engineered by an Austrian, and in Europe, for example, they've got all the metros. Everything's just underground. Well, Bolivia has something like that, but above the ground. And we're not talking high above the ground. I mean, you could be on the street and you just look up and you'll see these cable cars. You know, two of my favorite lines are the green line and the yellow line. You'll see beautiful landscape. You'll just see a bunch of fun stuff. It's an exciting thing to do. The locals use it for transportation, but for visitors like us, we're going to see it as an attraction unto itself. So I would definitely recommend checking out those lines. Something you'll see is the buildings over in La Paz. They look like Transformer, almost like a comic. I don't know what the heck they're doing and what they thought of, but yeah, they got these buildings like it's some kind of comic book or something. And what they do on top of that, they really don't have good laws on building stuff. So, your neighbor will kind of build so high, and then you kind of say, hey, Pedro across next to me over here, he built here, let me build a little bit higher. And they keep building higher and higher. And in some cases, these buildings have gotten pretty close to the cable car. Now, fortunately, they're not touching the cable car. They're not going to go up that high. And if they did, they would just burn it down very quickly. So that's what I would do on the day of arrival. Again, get a good night's sleep. And then your first real day, sleep in, have lunch, start turning around 1 o'clock, see the Valley de las Animas, and do a couple of the cable car lines, green and yellow, my favorites, and then call it a day. Now, where you go next is not just so much of what I like. It's going to be very contingent upon the domestic flights, because there's 2 other parts of Bolivia that you're really going to want to visit. One are the pampas, or wetlands, and the other one are the salt flats, which I had previously mentioned. Unfortunately, these domestic flights between the wetlands and La Paz are not daily. They go sometimes 2 times a week, sometimes 3 times. We have had some instances in where the flights just completely shut down and we have to do 12-hour land transfers. And of course, we just try to avoid that at all costs. But usually there's going to be about 2 flights a week into the wetlands and out of. So you would fly from La Paz to Rurembasque and Rurembasque back to La Paz. So, this is one of the reasons why it's best to go with a tour operation company, whether ours or another, because it's a little bit stressful in figuring this stuff out. And it's not easy all the time to even figure this stuff out online. So what we do is we kind of plan out when these flights are. So let's just, for the time being, assume that this domestic flight will go on the 2nd day of your time in Bolivia. You fly from La Paz to Rurembasque, and from there you're picked up and you're taken via a 3-hour drive to a village called Santa Rosa. And it's from this village you'll take a small boat and you'll do a cruise along the Yacuma River. And there's going to be different eco lodges. Definitely you want to choose your eco lodge in advance. Go with a good quality one, because the regular ones are going to be kind of nasty. They're not going to be that clean, and they're not going to have many amenities, so make sure you go with one of the better quality ones. So you get there now on the 2nd day, and the eco lodge is going to have the activities arranged for you. The eco lodge is going to provide the meals to you. You're going to go looking for caimans and monkeys, and they've got this rodent, I can't pronounce it, so I'm not going to try, but it just looks something like I don't even know, something like a possum meets like an anteater type of thing. It's spelled Capybaras. You also see birds over there in the pampas, in these wetlands on this cruise. So basically the eco lodge will take you out every single day, and you're going to be looking for these different animals, and you'll even be taken to some swamps. You're going to have to be wearing these special shoes because you're going to get in pretty deep, and they'll show you some good stuff. You'll see snakes in there and that kind of stuff as well. So it is a real deal experience. This is not just some tourist trap. It is the real thing. So now on the third day, you're going to be on the tour with the Eco Lodge. There's also some fishing that they'll do. Also, if you're lucky, you'll see pink dolphins. That is definitely one of the highlights of being in the wetlands. You may see anacondas and some other things. The Eco Lodges typically allow you to go swimming in the river and kind of play around with these dolphins. I would not get in that water for the life of me. I mean, there are caiman inside there and a bunch of other stuff. You know, if you want to do that and just, you know, put me in your will. Just please put me in your will before you do that. It'd be greatly appreciated. People do it, and people usually don't have problems with it, but there's no way on earth I would ever jump in the water knowing that there's caimans around me. So that's my 2 cents on that issue. It's now, we'll call it your 4th day in Bolivia, and at this point I would recommend you fly back to La Paz from Rurambasque. Same way, same everything. So you basically have Rurambasque the day that you arrive. The next day you have a full day. The next day you leave. So you kind of have about 2 days worth of enjoying yourself over there. Now, what happens when you say, well, Charlie, I want an extra day or maybe 2 extra days? You may shoot yourself in the foot with that, because these domestic flights between La Paz and Rurambasque only leave again at certain days of the week, which I had previously said. So doing the math, you can't just wait a day and then take a next flight. There may not be another flight for about 3 days. See? So leave it like that. Leave it the way that I'm telling you, unless you want to spend something like 3 days more. You know, so now you're going to be up there for almost like 5 days. That, in my opinion, will be too much. Of course, it would be nice to have 1 more day, but just the way the flights are set up over there, it's not possible. So the only other option to that would be to go from the Eco Lodge back to Rurambasque, and then from Rurambasque to take a 12-hour land transfer back to La Paz. I have personally done that. I wouldn't recommend it. I had fun because the people I had with me were pretty funny. But that's for me, that's not for you. Don't do it. Now, basically, on the 4th day, you have taken that domestic flight back to La Paz. Make good use of your day. Spend the day sightseeing in La Paz. We provide an English-speaking tour guide. You're taken to Valley of the Moon, or Valle de la Luna. It looks somewhat similar to the valley that I was recommending on the first day, but different enough to where I recommend you see both of them. There's the square, the Plaza Murillo. It's a Spanish-looking square. There's another plaza called San Francisco. It's got some nice buildings. It's got like a cathedral there as well. And otherwise, there's the red cable car line and the blue. So now you know my 4 favorite lines on the cable car extensive system that they have. I would do all of that. What I would then do is go back to your hotel, take a shower. That night, I would not recommend sleeping in La Paz. Instead, I would recommend taking an overnight bus to Uyuni, the main city and gateway into the salt flats. And you're probably thinking to yourself, my God, you want me to take a 10-hour bus, overnight bus? Yes, I do. If there are domestic flights that typically leave in the morning and you can get there early in the morning the next day, hey, do it. The problem with that is usually those flights don't exist, and when they do exist, half the time they get canceled. Why? I don't know. I would not take a private car. These overnight buses, there's about 3 companies that do it. They all leave around a similar time, 9, 10 o'clock. They're actually pretty good. It's hard for me to sleep on airplanes and buses, but I slept on this one. The chairs recline about 80%. They have some snacks and whatnot on there. It's very relaxing, actually. So I slept on it just fine, and I was very impressed. If you take a private car, the car's not going to recline like that. So yeah, I would take the overnight bus. It was a lot better than I had thought. I thought it was going to be hell, to be honest, and it's not. And it's very, very rare that one of our customers complain about these overnight buses. They've done a pretty good job with that. So now we're on the 5th day in Bolivia, and this is when I recommend you start the 3-day tour around these salt flats. The first one that I recommend you visit is the train cemetery. That was one of my favorite things I've seen in Bolivia. It's a great place also to take photos. It really is. You have also the village of Colchani, and in Colchani you'll see the salt factory. It's also a good place from where to purchase lunch. After that, you go straight to the salt flats. That's the one that everybody knows. That's the Salar de Uyuni. Those are the largest salt flats on Earth, and probably the number one thing that people know about Bolivia. So I would spend some time in those salt flats, of course, the Salar de Uyuni, and then I would recommend you check out the Salt Hotel. It's been turned into a museum. It's a very cool hotel. I liked it very much. Our customers like it. There's an island that I recommend you visit after the Salt Hotel. It's called Isla, I cannot pronounce this one, Incahuasi. That one, it's really beautiful. You've got nice views from there as well. Incidentally, if you go January, February, or March during the wet season, that's cut off. You cannot access it because there's too much water. So that is kind of what it is. I recommend that evening, meaning the 5th evening, that you sleep in San Juan. The lodge itself will provide you dinner. So between the tour operation company like ours or another one, and these lodges where you'd be sleeping, the food is provided to you. Something to note though is I would not have high expectations of these lodges in the salt flat. We use some of the best that there are. There are some that are even better than the ones we use. However, logistically they are so out of the way, and that is why we don't use them. I mean, it will add hours of transportation to this tour. So generally speaking, I just would not expect that much from these lodges. We still give the best ones, but just expect very, very basic lodges over there. I think one day these better lodges will be built in places where they should be built, as opposed to far off the beaten path. But for here and now, just kind of put up with it. Now on the 6th day, it's going to be more about lagoons. There's the Capaña Lagoon, Hedionda Lagoon, and the Honda Lagoon. There's also this desert, the Siloli desert, and then there's Laguna Colorada. It's also called the Red Lagoon. It's the same place. All these lagoons are very beautiful. They're different colors. You'll see different types of flamingos. You'll see llamas and alpacas there as well. That was one of my favorite days in the salt flats, and it is a reminder that when you go down there, it's not just all salt flats. It's not just what you're seeing in the Salar. The next day, meaning the sixth day, you're going to see a completely different thing. You're going to see these lagoons, different colors, flamingos, and so forth. Now, on the seventh day, what I recommend is, again, all of these nights in the salt flats, you're going to be changing hotels. On the sixth night, you're going to be sleeping somewhere. The next day, you're going to leave just like you did on the fifth night and the sixth day. You're changing lodges. On the seventh day, there's these geothermal areas. There's a Sol de Mañana. There's Termas de Polques. Those are these hot springs. I really like that. I went swimming over there. It's very natural. It's very refreshing. It's good to see it both in the night and the day, but in this itinerary that I'm putting together for you and everybody else, I'm recommending you actually go there in the morning. It's a little bit warmer. And after seeing those hot springs, there's a desert called Salvador Dali. There's also a Laguna Verde, and there's the village of Villamar. Now, Sol de Mañana is a geothermal field, and it's got this volcanic activity, and there's sulfur springs over there. The village, Villamar, I recommend you go to, is simply just so you can purchase food, or depending on the tour operation company, the food may be included already. But that's the main reason to go over there. Now, after going to Villamar, I would recommend going to the Valley of the Rocks. That's also a very impressive attraction. And then you're basically going to end up back in Uyuni. So you're going to start in Uyuni, you're going to end in Uyuni, you're going to do a circle around Uyuni, and you're going to need to get there before going back to La Paz. If there's a flight, great. In most cases, there's not. So you'll be taking that overnight bus back to La Paz from Uyuni. Same type of bus, same reclining chairs, the whole name. So by the time you get to La Paz, it'll be the 8th day now, and you'll get in around 6 in the morning. Hopefully you've had a good night's sleep. What we do with our tours, we take the customers back to the hotel so they can leave their luggage, and then we immediately take them to, via a 3-hour drive, to Copacabana, and it's basically just the main town, and from there you see Lake Titicaca. I don't know who came up with that name. Whoever did probably didn't speak English beforehand, but yes, Lake Titicaca. It is a cool place to be because you'll see a lot of the native culture over there. There's a place called Sun Island that you get to by boat, and you'll see some remains, and some Inca remains, that's what they are. And it's the same Inca people from Peru, by the way. So the ruins are nice, but what I liked most about being in that area was the people, the way they're dressed, the way they're living, what they're doing. They're not loud people like you'd find elsewhere in Latin America. You know, Brazilians are passionate, talkative people. Argentinians are. The natives from Latin America generally are on the more reserved side. The ones that are mixed more with Spanish become a little bit louder as a trend, but the ones that are just like the real deal, almost purely natives, they tend to be a little bit softer spoken and reserved to themselves. However, if you do make an effort to talk to them, they're pretty okay with it. They're okay. They just want you to show some respect and give them a little space. And if you do, spark up a little conversation with them with the help of a translator, they'll warm up to you, and then later they may allow you to take a photo with them. I took some great photos with them. Lake Titicaca, I recommend you do as a day trip. from La Paz. The only time I would say to relocate to Copacabana and Lake Titicaca instead of returning to La Paz is if from Bolivia you want to then transfer over to Peru, because it's the same Lake Titicaca on the Peruvian side. You can easily transfer from there. It's an easy border crossing right there. And we're going to be talking about Peru in a different video, so we'll stay focused right now on Bolivia. On the 9th day, I would recommend you make a day trip from La Paz to the Yunkas Road. It used to be called the world's most dangerous road. Don't worry, it is not like that anymore. Whatever you're seeing on YouTube is of a bygone era. The roads used to be very small and buses would need to pass through there. And I mean, these buses were on the cliff. My God. It was scary as hell. There's no way I would do it. There's no way I would have any of our customers on it. They have opened up those roads and they now look like normal roads. So the title of the world's most dangerous road, they have been stripped of that title. Now this road is actually a lot of fun. It is a very scenic road. The landscape is beautiful. At the top, where you start, it's quite cold, and the more you descend, it gets warmer and warmer. And this is why we tell people to bring more than one layer of clothes. By the time you're done, you're going to want it all off. By the time you start, it's cold, you want it all on. Now, this is kind of a tricky part here. It is very beautiful from the start. And a lot of the companies will say, hey, here's the bike, because that's typically how it's done. You go on a bike ride, always downhill, and you're constantly going and going for hours down this very scenic road. You know, it is very beautiful to do it on bike. It's also a little bit dangerous, not because of the road itself, but I mean, this is a normal road. This is a twisting and winding road with other cars on it, and it's really beautiful. So the thing is if you start looking around and you take your eye off the road, you can die. I think the smart thing to do is just stay in the car. Don't go on the bike yet. Don't go on the bike yet. There does become a point where you are now off the road and you're on trails, on these dirt trails, still descending. So this is not a hard bike ride to do. You just kind of sit on the bike and press the brake, that's it. So once you're away from the main road, this beautiful main road, scenic road, and now you're on the trail, go ahead, get on the bike, make sure you got all your pads and the helmet, and have your fun. So this is kind of a happy medium between enjoying the scenic drive on a vehicle, on a car, which is safe, and then once you get to the trail, now you can get to the bike and finish it that way. Usually the companies that will do it will also do footage of you when you're on the bike. Make sure to get your footage, and that's it. Now, that was the 9th day. The 10th day is when I recommend you simply go from La Paz back to the airport. And then typically La Paz people will fly from there to Colombia and then home, or sometimes they're going to need to fly to Santa Cruz and then fly home. It just depends how you're doing it. Finding the flights for Bolivia is not easy, and that's why typically people ask us to find it on their behalf. It's a little bit more advanced. So I think we've covered a lot of this. As far as costs, Bolivia is not that expensive, but of course when you want to do this on a private basis, it's more expensive. There are shared tours of the salt flats, which are more affordable. I'm not that crazy about the shared tours because they're not as extensive as the private ones are. You do miss some important places, but it does save a buck for sure. Hotels are not that expensive. Sometimes what people will do from Yuluni, they don't go back to La Paz. They go the other way. They go to a place called Potosi as a stopover and end the day in a colonial city called Sucre. Potosi is popular because it's got these mines, and at one point it made Bolivia very rich. Or it didn't make Bolivia rich. The people who controlled Bolivia, the Spaniards, it made them very rich because they were mining like crazy over there, and there was just a very large volume of minerals they could extract. And if you go there now, it is a little bit sad. They're still mining. The mining conditions are not that great. So we don't take our customers there just because it's not one of those things where you take photos with the miners and everybody's smiling and kind of look at you type of thing. These guys do look a little bit beaten up and depressed. So I've chosen not to take our customers there unless they recommend it, unless they request it, I mean. And then anyway, from Potosi, you just go from Uluni, you go to Potosi, it takes a couple of hours. And then from there, you go to Sucre, which takes another 2.5, 3 hours, something like that. Sucre is a colonial city. There are some things that are worth seeing over there. I would not put Sucre on the same caliber as other colonial cities in Latin America. I mean, there's certain cities in Latin America I would recommend you go out of your way for. Havana, San Juan in Puerto Rico, Quito, Cusco, Buenos Aires, Ouro Preto in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, Salvador in Brazil. So there are some really good ones. Sucre is pleasant. It's one of those places, if you're already in the area, if you have extra time, go ahead and check it out. But it's pleasant. I'm not going to tell you to drop what you're doing to see it. But nonetheless, some people really want to see Potosi and Sucre. That part becomes expensive because there are fewer cars and people who will do that transfer, although it's not that far. And the people who are there know that there are not as many, so they jack up the prices a lot. It's just not something that most customers do, most tourists do, and because there's a low supply of drivers for that, it will be twice the price of everywhere else. So just take that in consideration. The food, it's, I guess, similar to elsewhere in the region. There are not a lot of specific things that I said, okay, this is Bolivian food. They kind of blend some stuff from the neighboring countries. Overall, I like the food. I did. If you like Peruvian food, if you like Chilean food, I think you like the Bolivian food just fine. There's a lot of healthy options. And yeah, I did. I'm not going to say it was my favorite food. I wouldn't put on the same caliber as Brazilian food and Argentinian food, but I still had great meals every day. I did. We've already kind of touched on the people and what they're like. There are far more Native Americans in Bolivia than elsewhere in Latin America, and it's also because they're more, it's more mountainous. So a lot of the natives in the colonial times just stayed up there, and they wouldn't go down and fight with the Spanish, and the Spanish wouldn't go up there. So there was not as much mixing as well as killings. Safety. Maybe La Paz, you take a little bit more precaution than normal. Not really, though. It doesn't really have a bad reputation for that kind of thing. You likely will see protests on the street in La Paz where they'll block off the street. They'll basically take these worn out tires and they will not let people through the street unless they pay a toll, basically. And the toll is something like 50 cents or $1, and the driver will pay it so he can go through. When you see that kind of stuff, don't worry. It's just a normal day-to-day thing. It's just a way from locals to make some money. It's not going to affect you any, so don't let that sort of thing bother you and worry you. The one thing that you should be concerned about is altitude. Bolivia is at a high altitude, so it does take a little bit of time to adjust to the difference in altitude. You'll likely get some nosebleeds as well. Your nose will feel very dry. You get some bleeds over there. If it happens to you, don't think it's something abnormal. And if you're really worried about it, there's these portable oxygen tanks that you can take. It's literally just a portable one and you spray it into you. Believe it though, what helps best with the altitude sickness are the coca leaves. And yes, these are the same leaves that are used to make cocaine. You will see coca leaves, especially when you're in the, well, it's closer to Lake Titicaca area, but there's elsewhere as well. You'll see these coca leaves. Locals will use the coca leaves. They'll chew on it, typically down here, and they do that for the altitude sickness. And we do recommend that customers will kind of chew on the leaves. Don't chew on the candy versions of it. They try to sell that at like liquor stores. Don't do it. Those don't really work. You got to do the leaves. You got to just chew and chew and chew at them. I think that wraps it up. That's what Bolivia is all about. We get a lot of solo female travelers for Bolivia. If you're a female watching this video and thinking about going by yourself, it's done all the time. We also get buddies going and that sort of thing. This is very much an adventurous type of trip. And it's one that I recommend. If I didn't, we wouldn't have our company operating in Bolivia. And here you'll see our landing page for Bolivia. We have a 10-day tour in which you see and do almost it all. I use the word almost because there are some other parts of Bolivia closer to Santa Cruz, which are also beautiful, but we don't include those because to get there and out of there is very difficult and expensive. You'll see here what's included. The domestic flights are included, so you don't have to stress out about that. The hotels, we have English-speaking tour guides, all the ground and water transportation's included, the entry fees. You've got your own on-call concierge if you need anything. Somebody is at your disposal, somebody who I have trained. We have several meals included, breakfast, lunches, and dinners alike. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see our itinerary. It tells you exactly where we take you and in which order we take you to these places that I recommend. And I've all personally visited them, all of them. I've visited more places than just this, but I've selected the ones that I think are important for visitors to see. The stuff basically not to miss. If you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see some of our reviews. We've got over 850 5-star reviews. Most of the questions that you may have can be answered in our frequently asked questions section. And if you want to know more about us, you'll see it right here. One of the main reasons why we exist as a company is our tours are more extensive than anyone's. We cover these countries better than anybody. I have personally been there. I have tried it and tested it. I have been to tour 3 times more than the places that I even recommend that you visit. I have overdone it just so I know that I've covered it, and I'm going to ultimately recommend the places that I think you should not miss under any circumstances. We're very easy to reach, and unlike almost all other companies, we have never canceled, except for years ago during COVID. Pre-COVID and post-COVID, we have absolutely never canceled on anybody. We also do not charge solo travelers with single supplements. You can start whenever you would like. So these are some examples of flexibility that some of the other companies do not offer. I've also published several travel guides around the world, and of course South America is one of those. You'll see that right over here. And in my South America book, I write all about Bolivia. And I think that's it for now.